At long last, ladies and gentlemen, we arrive to the 3D viewport itself, where we're going to begin playing about with the objects in our scene. Before we get started, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just enable something known as screencast keys. So you'll see I've just added an additional panel here. This is the side panel. This side panel will have these various tabs going along the side. Each of these houses its own set of tools. You should only see the first three: item, tool and view. The next two that you see on my screen, 3D print and screencast keys, are associated with add-ons that have been used to improve Blender's functionality. I'm going to use the screencast keys add-on here by left clicking and then going to set origin and position it in my 3D viewport. This way, whenever I press on any of my mouse buttons or on the keyboard, you will be able to see exactly which button has been pressed. You obviously won't have this enabled, but this is purely for the benefit of you guys being able to see exactly what I am doing. Now, let's move on to the objects themselves. Let's start with the basics. So selecting objects in the 3D viewport simply requires that you hover your mouse over that object and press the left mouse button. The selected object will appear with a yellow highlight going around the outline. If we left click on this object here, which is the camera object, you can see it gets that same yellow-orange outline. This third object up here is the light. So this applies the lighting to our scene, and you can see as we left click on each one, a new object becomes selected. You can also select multiple objects at the same time. If you hold down the Shift key on your keyboard and then left click on another object, that object becomes selected. It has the same orange-yellow outline that it did before, but now the previously selected object, rather than being unselected, which was the case before when we were just left clicking, this object now appears with a different colour on its outline. So this is a much deeper orange. This basically means that we have two objects that are selected, but only one of them can be the active object. In this case, the camera, because it was the last object that we selected. If we hold down Shift and left click on the light object, this becomes the active object and the other two are selected objects. There are important differences between the two: the active object and the selected object. As we continue to learn about new tools, for example pivot points, you're going to learn how important it is to define what the active object is going to be. Not only can we select our objects in the 3D viewport, we can also select them from the outliner panel as well. If we left click away from any of our objects, we effectively deselect all three. If we come over to our outliner panel, we can select the objects by left clicking. So I can left click on the camera object to select it. I can left click on my cube object or my light object. I can also hold down the Shift key and select my objects in my outliner panel. However, the order of which is the active selection is reversed in this case. So in the 3D viewport, the last object that was selected becomes the active object. However, in the outliner, it is the first object that remains the active object. So we select the light and it's active. If we Shift select the cube, it's added to the selection, but the light is still the active object. If we add the camera, same thing. It's added to the selection, but is not the active object.